to episode 2 of the Broken Barbell podcast with me, Dave Barth. We have Kevin J. Hughes and Tom Patterson. Today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about the conjugate system, Louie Simmons, and basically how to and how not to. Before we get started on that, I want to thank everybody for heading over to our SoundCloud page and giving us a listen there. And hopefully you saw that through our Facebook page, Broken Barbell Podcast, just on Facebook. Please take some time to shoot us some likes. We have 49 likes so far. We're loving the love you guys are giving us. Apparently we've had 166 views though, so we should probably have a few more likes there. We appreciate every little bit of help you guys can give us. So yeah, we're gonna hop right into it and kind of get talking on this conjugate system sort of thing. So I think it's safe to say that it is one of the most complicated things to discuss, to remember and think of. However, it's probably the most productive and the easiest thing to accomplish for yourself in the gym.
Yes. It's a big distinction to make between the conjugate system and other program types. So what the conjugate system isn't, it's not a linear periodization or block periodization, which are more common ways of programming, especially for athletes. And that's block periodizations where you have like different phases, so hypertrophy phase, strength phase, endurance phase, and like cardio, something like that.
Meso and macro cycles.
Mesos and macro cycles.
It's overthought.
Yeah, and you can still use macro cycles with the conjugate system, I find. The big difference between the conjugate system and the block periodization is you're training all your different energy systems and all your different strength types at the same time.
Very sport specific, not maximal strength or absolute strength specific.
Well, I don't know, because there are max effort days, right? So you are...
Yeah, there are max effort days, but like, let's say you're periodizing it for hockey.
Yeah.
So you have your hypertrophy phase. And people do that really wrong, but then you have like all that skill stuff, whereas this is your max efforts and your dynamic efforts, and pretty much...
Yeah. And I mean, you can throw some conditioning exercises in there too. But max effort and dynamic efforts, we'll split those up so people know what we're talking about there. So that's 2 different days. Max effort days, you're working at, is it submax, supermax, submax?
It's a submax, but it's pretty friggin' heavy. It's like 90 to 97%.
Yeah.
And that's just barbells. That's
at your training percentage, not your competition. Your competition.
Yeah, and that's when you'll try to PR in competition is essentially what you shoot for. But so that essentially what a max effort day would be like is a back squat where you could be working at, like I said, 90 to 97. Mm-hmm. It could be a couple of heavy doubles and then a couple of heavy singles, and then you kind of walk away from that.
Yeah. That's your main lift.
Just your main lifts. And then the rest of the day you sort of jump into almost like your hypertrophy or bodybuilding style where you could have, what do they do?
Leg extensions.
It could be anywhere from 4 to 12 exercises in a day, and you're working on volume just to get your building blocks ready.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this is, what we're talking about here, this is more specifically the Westside Barbell conjugate system.
Yeah.
What happens inside Westside is Westside.
It is different. Nobody really knows what happens in Westside because it's changing. So
it is possible to do a conjugate style system without, you don't necessarily need to do max effort and dynamic effort training. Conjugate is just meaning you're constantly training all your body's energy systems throughout your sport career. The Westside system is a little bit more well known in the West, and that is where you divide it. Typically, it's 4 days of training a week, upper and lower body splits. And keep in mind, it's a powerlifting gym, so geared towards them. So one day, upper body day would be bench press, lower body day would be either squat or deadlift.
Squat and deadlifts. And the way they break it up, again, this is Westside Barbell, is like the main idea is that they're taking those 3 main lifts, they're powerlifting competition lifts, so back squat, bench press, deadlift, and they say that, Louie Simmons says that they only focus on 35% on those lifts.
Yeah, so of their total training volume, if you looked at their tonnage.
Yeah, only 35%. I mean, 65%. My favorite quote, and Kevin told me this the first time before I actually heard it from him, he's like, how tall is a pyramid? Only as big as its base.
The foundation.
The foundation, right? And that's how they related it to like CrossFitters and everything like that, and even Olympic weightlifters.
You are nothing without absolute strength.
Yeah,
yeah,
and working on that, and that's why the conjugate system is actually kind of nice.
Yeah. So again, that's typically with the conjugate system, you're working with a lot of assistance exercises, like Dave said. So that's what was it? They did that study with they took a bunch of Russian weightlifters or whatever and ran them through a conjugate style system where they were training with I think 60 or 40 different.
Now,
moves.
did the conjugate originate in Soviet?
It's pretty much every style of training is basically Russian in some way. Like the Chinese is Russian.
Yeah.
Just decided to make it.
Yeah. So it's again lots of assistance exercises, and a big part of it, especially in the Westside system, is you don't train the lifts you want to improve. So if you want to be a better squatter, you don't necessarily squat more. You do good mornings, you do box squats with bands and chains,
leg
extensions, stuff like that. So stuff that's going to build up the muscles, but you're not necessarily training that move, which is where it comes to play with the max effort days. This is where it gets a little confusing. Max effort days, because you're doing maximal training, so above 90% or sub-max training, you can only train above 90% for 3 weeks approximately. After that, you're going to start to retard your progress, so you're going to go backwards. So the way they get around that is they do, say one day they do a bench press with 90% or whatever, set a new PR there. The next week for the max effort upper body day, they do a close grip bench press.
Different variations.
Variations of the same movement.
Yeah, or a bench press with off blocks or stuff like that. So that's where it gets tricky with the programming, I find. It's because, like, you've got to do all these variations. You're not repeating, and your percentages are constantly going to be all over the place. Because you have to know, if you're doing a maximal close grip bench, you have to know what your max is for a close grip bench.
So you always are trying to find some kind of new PR, even if it would be a 5 RM. I think that's when we experimented with it. That's what we kind of said we did. Or no, we did a 3 and a 1. And you would never do a 5. You do a 3 and a 1, and then work at percentages from that.
Yeah.
And that, again, that seemed to work, but it's really hard to stick to this if you're like us and you all have program ADD.
Yeah.
But they're talking as far as like exercise variability. He's talking about Bulgarian weightlifters and how everybody compares to them and how the Americans are trying to compare to them as if they are. They're not Bulgarians. No. And they said they had 64 exercises that they would use.
Yeah.
The Americans have 6.
Yeah. And Louie Simmons makes the point that that's the case of someone being a model athlete. If all they had to do was 6 exercises,
they would have to be perfect.
Yeah. So again, this is where you get into a little bit more of the science aspect of training with adaptation and stuff like that, and what causes people to adapt.
Yeah.
I was reading Super Training. You made the reference to like current adaptive reserves. That's Dave's phone.
It's fine.
So thinking of it like a fuel tank almost. You're training, and you have this reserve of fuel or adaptation that is going to run out as you keep training. And once that depletes itself, you need to do a deload, you need to do something else and let that fill up again, and then you train what you want to improve on, and that's what you adapt for. So again, that's the
science of Tom version that we all know and love. He'll
with a deload one day for you. That usually should be week 4 into a program.
Yes,
this is what we were talking about last week with like that pendulum where you'd have your low, medium, high, deload. Essentially you'd start your high on like week 5, but probably not.
So, and this is the simpler aspect of the Westside conjugate method, is the dynamic effort days.
The fun, cool days.
They just follow the basic pendulum waves. So 70, 75, 80% of your max.
Yeah.
And that can be simple lifting, that can be pause squats, that can be with bands or chains, which is known as accommodating resistance.
Yeah.
And I think this is something people might get confused or caught up on, is everyone thinks Westside Barbell. Who knows Westside Barbell thinks bands and chains, right?
Yes,
and reverse hypers and stuff like that. But you don't necessarily need to be using those methods on a dynamic effort day. A pause squat with 75% of your max on the bar is a dynamic effort.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The accommodating resistance makes it a bit easier just for speed production because it's lighter on the bottom.
Yeah, if you're going to train slow, you're going to be slow, and that's not a goal.
If you're serious about powerlifting, get the bands.
The bands are crazy.
Chains are all right, but bands definitely give more of a...
See, I would disagree. I think the chains are a little better because the bands are going to lose their tension over time.
Okay,
Well,
so
no,
let's say
that's-
let's take out equipment failure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Outside of that, we were talking about this
Yeah.
before we sat down. Is that if nothing else, that band doesn't give you a choice but to be in a perfect bar path if you didn't set it up like an asshole.
That's true.
Yeah.
It is a constant firing up. Think of it this way: cost effective because like a load of bands is $40. And let's say you're on a red, then you're on a blue, then blah, blah,
Yeah, that's true.
you're flying it the whole time.
Yeah.
And they are dynamic; they move a lot better. You couldn't do it with a clean.
I'd
love to
with
see
the
it.
bands though, you're gonna get way more overspeed eccentric movement, right?
That's
There's more
that's the
true.
thing.
That's
Yeah.
true.
more kinetic energy being used
On the way down.
Yeah.
Well, on the way down or on whatever.
Yeah, so that overspeed eccentric. This is an interesting bit because one of my teachers at college talked about this. Everyone focuses if you say eccentric exercise, people always think slow.
Or
right? Like
the lengthening phase of the muscle should be, or the movement should be slow.
yeah, which is not necessarily true because you're losing all your elastic strength in that move, which in some cases isn't necessarily a bad thing. That's why they do box squats because when you sit down on the box, you lose all that tension, so you have to
Refire absolutely
refire
everything.
Yeah. build up
everything.
that-
It's almost
Skips,
two.
right?
It's two totally different movements.
Yeah,
One
exactly. Whereas training with a overspeed eccentric, you're going to be pulled down a lot faster, and you're going to get a greater stretch reflex of the muscles, and then you almost rebound.
That's why when you see
bottom.
people who can squat really fast, you bounce at the bottom.
Yeah.
Oh, nearly bounce, right?
Yeah.
Or Olympic weightlifters. Like the top of the clean is one of my favorites. So they come up from the clean, they stand up quick for like that last 3 or 4 inches.
Yeah.
They can
Yeah.
manage to bounce the bar on their chest on the rack
Readjust.
position, wrap the bar on their body, and then use the momentum
Yeah.
from it to blast it up.
Yeah.
And
Kinetic
that's-
energy transfer.
Exactly, and that's so in
Now,
competition that's very beneficial.
With
Very.
some coaches, use plyometrics for training their
Okay.
athletes.
Yes, now this is something that it's cool to touch on. I can't even say that I fully understand
No, I don't.
everything, but
Well, this plyometrics.
I think that's an extreme measure. Like,
Yeah.
bring it to an extreme.
yeah, you probably have to be pretty high end for this.
Yeah.
Everybody jumps, everybody does all these
Yeah.
things, long jumps and things like
But
that.
the real plyometrics that again discovered by the Soviets,
Yeah.
Russians, it's a proper term for that is shock method training.
hmm
What we think of as plyometrics are box jumps,
Burpees.
hurdles, anything
Yeah.
termed explosive
Yeah.
or rapid, but that's not the actual
Plyometrics?
plyometrics. That's not a true plyometric. A true plyometric would be something like a depth jump, where you stand on a box,
Walk off.
jump off, hit the ground, and jump again.
Try to rebound yourself.
So what
Yeah.
happens, the idea is you put your muscles...
6 feet boxes, by the way. Let's just
Yeah.
mention that this is a 6-foot box.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. You'll snap
No,
your Achilles.
not if you're new.
But then
So-
the theory behind it is that the time to reverse yourself.
Reversal,
Yeah.
reversal of movement, and it puts the muscles in an already loaded position before you fire them again.
Yes.
Yeah.
So because there's that shock or that impact, the muscles stretch and they tense up, and so they're not really in an ideal position to fire. They've technically already fired, and then you're
Yeah.
firing them again rapidly. So that's that. Again, my understanding. I might be out to lunch on this. It is like Dave said, true plyometrics, very, very complicated. Very beneficial if you can use them properly, but
Definitely be careful when you
Yeah. If you're new, don't.
Don't,
No.
exactly,
Very simple.
yeah.
But it's a matter of taking that impact that's on
Yes.
you, and essentially that's just a bodyweight jumping off a 6-foot box that
Don't use a
produces
6-foot
the
box.
don't do that, but
No.
it produces the same stimulus that a really heavy squat would. Essentially,
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
just a new way. So again, it's just that constantly varied idea of what you want to train.
Yeah, exactly.
But using this, so like if we take conjugate method, we take primarily like we talked about the Westside Barbell method, which I think we're more familiar with, and it just seems to work. I mean, the guy at the gym has. We had AJ Roberts. He has 2 people who squat over 1,200 pounds.
Yeah.
He has like 20 some who squat over
Yeah.
800 pounds.
And even they'd
that's-
have just the most random athletes, like some UFC fighter.
Yeah, Matt Brown.
Matt
yeah.
Immortal Brown. And there's
And
another
you know,
guy,
yeah,
too.
he probably did really help in the sense of explosive movements.
Yeah.
But if you're a fighter, you got to fight. And I mean, if you
Yeah.
can lift weights, that's perfectly fine. If you gotta do a lot of hip extension, like if you gotta do a sprawl. If anyone's a fighter,
Yeah.
you'll know what a sprawl is where you do a hip extension and you go right into the ground.
Yeah.
Which it would help in the octagon.
It's my secret move in the non-octagon.
Yeah. I got talked with this.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
got to talk to this in alley bar.
No, but yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that it did benefit him in the octagon, but
Well, it definitely made him a better athlete.
Yes,
in general.
overall.
And what they talked about is that they didn't necessarily use all those powerlifting methods. They said they use like lots of like posterior chain building, so like the reverse hyper,
Yeah.
which again we're all
which
trying
Louie
to
Simmons created, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's his thing, which is something that it'd be cool to see in all gyms. Not everybody could use it, and then
No.
everybody would all of a sudden have a panic attack as soon as they felt how it was actually working.
Yeah.
But lots of sled pushes, that posterior chain engagement, so whether you're sprinting with it, pushing it,
Wheelbarrows.
slowly, wheelbarrows are really good. And what they did, or what he talked about was is that they get his heart rate going, or they'd go and lift something really heavy, and then they'd make him go and do skill work. So whether that was grappling or whatever fighters do rolling around the mat.
Yeah.
But doing that while basically exhausted, fatigued, working
Yes.
from a point of fatigue, because that's what you want. You have 3 to 5 minutes to do it. You're going to be bagged in the first one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So now you have 2 minutes to fight exhausted. So that's what you want. This is what we talked about. I think we talked about this last week, or at least I was talking in the office about it. Saying, no, I was just in the office. Using this as a CrossFit thing is like, and this is why I decided to change my programming, was it's one thing to be able to lift something, but a power lifter or an Olympic lifter, you have unlimited time to do it.
Yeah,
Right.
essentially.
I said, you know what I mean?
Limited
competition.
repetitions.
Yeah, but like if I said you could take 3 to 5 minutes rest if you want. If my goal is to accomplish a lot, I want to get it done as fast as I can.
Yeah.
Or I only have X amount of time to do it. So I'm gonna have to approach that heavy deadlift with my heart fucking racing.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what I have to start to train. So it's one thing to be strong, absolutely strong, but
well, that's the thing. I mean,
and that's why I scale it back, because it's not a matter of let's be super strong at 3 lifts. Let's be just strong at everything, but not great. Good, not
yeah, and
great.
if you are trying to make a Westside Barbell workout plan, breaks is a big thing. Louie Simmons talked about that when he said with Olympic lifters, they're so nonchalant when they're lifting, right? They'll take like a 3-minute break.
Yeah.
Sitting on the couch and then go lift again.
Yeah.
He said, when I made my own Westside template, I timed my breaks.
Yeah.
And that's very important for the main move, especially when you're doing a dynamic and a max effort day. Max effort, you take 2 to 3 minutes. Dynamic, you take about
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Yeah, 30 seconds.
Which is
minute max.
brutal. If you're doing like sets of 12 box squats, that's not fun.
You don't have time.
Yeah.
30 seconds is nothing.
Yeah.
But it's like I think we did hit this. Is that doing that or trying to change the rather than taking that 2 to 3 minutes, you're seeing that every minute on the minute for strength training now.
Yes.
Now we're talking 5, probably 5 by 5.
Yeah.
And maybe we're talking 75 to 80%.
Yeah.
Which is pretty heavy when you have to do 5 sets in essentially 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's
hard
pretty
stuff.
crazy.
With your
stuff.
max effort days, how many sets is it in total that you're doing?
It's
I can't think of
it could literally be anything.
It's until you hit a PR or hit your max for that day.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a max of the day with optimal training. So if like 4 is low, 10 is high, you want that 7 rep kind of
so
thing.
be smart, plan it out, do like warm up sets and everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your working sets are going to be pretty minimum in terms of volume. But that's I was reading something about that. Garbage truck.
Fucking garbage truck going by with a bunch of guys just staring at old motorhome. Like, that's pretty nice.
Don't they know what's going on here?
Don't they know that this is Red Deer's #1 podcast? I think. Probably the radio has a good one, but
Probably.
With creating your own program through Westside, I did it, and I seen great benefit from it. I mean, my deadlift was at 385 and got to 405, and I was on a 2-inch deficit when I got that 405.
Yeah. Oh yeah. His methods definitely work.
they definitely work.
Yeah.
He was talking about Abby Grove. Abby Grove went into him. She's a CrossFitter. I think she was at the games probably once. If not, she's a seminar coach now.
Mm-hmm.
And what she did was she went in to see Louie, and she had a clean. So I'd probably be a full clean, no jerk, nothing. Guys at 155. I was telling you about this. I got the details now. I know what the hell I'm talking about. She's at 155. After 2 or 3 months, she got to 205 with her clean without doing a single clean.
Yeah.
This is just working on absolute strength and then that transferability. So this is kind of cool. Okay, so based on that, we've all talked about how, again, block periodization. You can't do maximal strength while you're doing essentially power training or Olympic weightlifting for our case.
Yeah.
He kind of shows you that, fuck you, you can.
Yeah.
You can
And
by all means.
That's a case of him taking someone and building up their weaknesses, which is what his methodology is all about. Find where you're weak and then train that. So if you're doing a bench press and you're failing on a certain point, and it's your triceps, well then just do a bunch of tricep exercises. It'll go up. So
It took 2 articles and 1 podcast and watching Louie Simmons to get into the gym and go do close grip bench.
Yeah.
I haven't done that in, I couldn't tell you how long, and I just bumped
And
it
you'll
and did
find out fast it's a lot of triceps.
Yeah,
no
it is.
chest.
It helps that lockout, and I mean, if that last inch is everything, you're going to need it, right?
So yeah, again, he's all about addressing weaknesses, building up weaknesses, and using that to improve your skill work, but it's, again, lots of variation, lots of different exercises. I don't think he's really geared towards Olympic lifting, and I don't think he's a great Olympic lifting coach.
Admittedly, he said that. Like, technically, I wouldn't.
No. And that's his thing. Like, to him, it's, again, powerlifting mentality, kind of. If he was an Olympic lifting coach, if you got the bar over your head, there's no points for style. Right?
Yeah. You lock it out with a big red face and is yelling at everybody until you lock it out.
Yeah, and which again is kind of contrary to the sport of Olympic lifting, which is very technically driven. And if you look at a lot of, again, Chinese, a lot of Asian weightlifters, very, very solid technique, lifting very, very big weights. Yes. So there's kind of 2 different approaches to it. I think building up your technique is better, because once you've perfected your technique, then you can build your strength.
Yes.
And improving your technique is always going to improve your lifts.
No, when you say that, though, let's look at your program right now. What are you... Because every time I see you're always doing a clean jerk or snatch, and then some variation of that, whether it's snatch balance, order 3 position, whatever.
Yeah.
How many times, or what are you doing as far as a press or a squat? You're not deadlifting, I know that.
No, not deadlifting.
Do you do anything else to supplement that? Because...
Yeah,
well, at least front squat.
Yeah, front squat once a week, back squat twice a week for this month. I'm going to change that up next month. And then pressing, either a military press or a SOTS press. So again, Tommy Kono's approach, the classical lifts, a squat and a press move, which is all he did. So this is where I think you've got 2 different schools, and the conjugate method definitely works. And Tommy Kono I wouldn't really say he was a model athlete. He was extremely underweight when he was born, very sickly, so genetically, I don't think he had any real advantages. I mean, he's Asian, so he's probably built for the sport a bit better, right? Biomechanically, but that's only going to get you so far. So I think...
Did he win in the Olympics?
Yeah, he won 2 gold medals in the Olympics. And
when?
Silver.
As an American?
As an American,
in the 70s? No.
50s. 50s to 60s. And set tons of world records. So his approach was, if you're an Olympic weightlifter, do Olympic weightlifting.
Now,
practice and you'll get better at it.
Has anyone broken his record?
Oh, most.
I would assume they've been smashed.
Yes,
genetically, we're all getting that much better.
Yeah.
But that being said, and this is why you have to argue, and I'm arguing with it. But if he hasn't won something since the 50s, and he's been training people since then, and nobody's won it, like, the Americans just don't win this shit. They just don't. The Russians and the Eastern Bloc countries do. So something had to have changed. And if everything that Louie is doing is essentially Russian method,
yes.
Well, however, whatever his interpretation of that might be, there's got to be a way.
Now, is there a little bit of a Bulgarian system?
No, they don't use it. The American weightlifting system is that, and that's what he said is wrong.
Yeah.
He said there's no qualified coaches, and everybody just picks up the first fucking book they can find.
Yeah.
And then does it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think you do need variation in Olympic weightlifting program. Like,
let's not talk about variation. I'm just saying the absolute strength before doing the Olympic weightlifting things.
Well, GPP, general
fitness.
That has to be there.
Yeah.
And that's something that, again, a lot of European countries do that we don't. Is like they don't specialize most of their athletes until their teen years and anything, but they're still training them before that, and it's just basic stuff, right?
Like if you look at we talked about. I don't know if you've seen it. I know I've seen it. He might have. We all went to. Well, you went to SAIT. I went to SAIT, and were you at SAIT when you got your level 1 Olympic?
No, I was doing it in Red Deer.
Okay,
guy.
Well, I think it's probably the same guy, but when we went there, he gave us a basic outline of what he would give his Olympic weightlifters for the day. Now these guys compete probably like what you guys do at the provincial levels and things like that. Yeah. And it was basic. It was roughly 8 exercises.
Yeah.
And that was it. And he preached, you'll do a set and then you'll piss off for 3 minutes. You do a set, maybe it's max day, so you go away for 5.
Yeah.
And things like this. And it's just like we have, in Beijing, we had that girl who got a bronze in weightlifting. And that's it. Now, we're not exactly a mecca for that stuff, but it's that same kind of dried up
Well, yeah, and
it just doesn't work.
We kind of talked about this when we saw that kid who was like that American who was 13 or whatever.
Oh,
CJ
Cummins?
No, there was
Wilson.
him, but there was another kid who jerked like 200 pounds off the blocks. He was like 15 or
Oh, that little kid, yeah.
14-year-old?
14 years old. So, I mean, they're, again, steroids, quite possible.
Take these Flintstone vitamins.
Yeah. But Dave, you made the point that it's not like there probably have been some Americans or Canadians who could have won a gold medal in weightlifting, but they're probably all playing hockey or football or basketball.
Yeah, we are.
What's be more beneficial?
Well, they were saying this is so cool. I forget who it was. It was probably Clock Off, but he was saying that he gets paid like more money than we make working. This could be around like $7,000 in Russian.
Yeah.
A month to be a weightlifter.
Yeah.
And that is Clock Off, but he said most weightlifters have this, and it's just like
well,
wow.
professional. It's just a sport that's actually followed and people actually it's revered, kind of. I would say.
Oh, that's what I loved about Luke. He said that's one of the main reasons we don't have heroes here.
Yeah.
We don't have Sidney Crosby or Michael Jordan.
For weightlifting.
We don't have weightlifters.
Like that.
You have 3 people in this room who know a couple of weightlifters.
Yeah.
Our favorites are usually Russians.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know,
I'd say my favorite American lifter is Donnie Schenkel.
He's pretty good.
I like Donnie Schenkel.
He's good, and he's the funniest guy in weightlifting.
He is.
But this is where CrossFit's kind of bridging that gap there because they do Olympic weightliftings, and you're seeing guys like Kendrick Ferris is pretty involved in the scene.
Asia Bardo left.
Yeah.
He's not going to have as much sex. He's like 6'7".
Yeah. And
or 6'4",
again,
whatever.
Clock Off is getting involved with CrossFit.
Mm-hmm.
What's Garrett Fisher's sister?
Oh, I don't
What's her
know.
name? Yeah,
I know who you're talking about. Garrett Fisher's sister.
She was at the Pan
American Games, yeah. And then Bergner's daughter. So
Yeah.
Mike Bergner's really involved with CrossFit now, but his daughter, I forget her name, but she competes. I think she just did junior. Lauren Fisher.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did a day in. I watched the day in the life of Lauren Fisher. That was really good.
Yeah.
And she went to the World Juniors of weightlifting or whatever, and she's like, I'd like to make the Olympics.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's a good question. Can you compete in CrossFit? And okay, like let's say like you are genetically you're ready for this.
Yeah.
Can you still train for like 2016? You just finished the games.
Well,
you placed okay. Like I think she placed like 7, 8 or something like that.
Yeah,
but maybe 12.
I would say if she's going for the Olympics, stick with weightlifting.
Well, that's again. You've got depending on when you're talking, like a 4-year gap. Clock Off hasn't been training for the Olympics this last year.
No, if you ask these guys, he's like he said, he's like, I'll start soon.
Yeah.
And he said, and soon was 6 months. He's only leaving himself about 18 months, I think, or less than that.
Keep in mind, he's at a high level.
He's already doing okay.
He's already there. So if you're
press about 250.
Yeah. So if you're
65 pounds.
Yeah,
if you're looking to go, I think if you're looking to branch from CrossFit to weightlifting, then drop the CrossFit. Get your
it
weightlifting.
would have given you a really good base.
Get your weightlifting to a point where you can be competitive, and then depending on when your competitions are, you could probably do CrossFit.
So with CrossFit being just like they're good at a lot of things.
Yeah.
Right. Like they're going to be better at some things than an Olympic weightlifter could be.
Yeah.
Just based on whatever, and maybe whether that be sprinting, running, swimming, whatever.
Yeah.
But is that a good enough base, or do you think because like Louie Simmons said, he's like they don't have a good base to do a lot of these things, and that is kind of like I say no, maybe not, but then yes too, because I think it's like kind of biased, right? Because it's like what so and so can only do 550-pound deadlifts. It's like I have a guy who can do 800. It's like, but I bet you that guy couldn't probably climb a rope and then do 3 overhead squats and then. 10 minutes later, and redo that, but with a clean.
I think this is where a lot of CrossFitters get kind of preachy and uppity about it. It's like,
no, let's fucking go. No, I'm just kidding.
It's like, oh, you can do this, but I can do this. And my biggest beef with CrossFit is they train people to be second best, because that's how you win at CrossFit. You don't win every competition.
Yes, that's right.
You come in 5th or 6th in all of them, and you win. So it doesn't really train people to be
competitive.
Not necessarily
competitive. I think you are competitive. That's instilled in you.
Yeah, you have
but you can be okay with being
you don't have to be the best.
But we gotta look at who's really competing. I mean, I've been at probably 3 CrossFit gyms, and I went for an open gym, which surprisingly they let me do Olympic weightlifting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually talked to one girl, and I was like, oh, she was in the CrossFit games. Well, not the games, sorry, regionals.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, you know, what do you do for a living? Say, oh, you know, I have a mom, I have 3 kids. and
Yeah, so
all this, right?
That's true. It's not.
Exactly.
It's not.
But that being said, powerlifter competitors outside of guys like AJ Roberts who are now doing they are doing the powerlifting seminar now for CrossFit, aren't they? Yeah, I think they're doing the level 1.
Which is smart.
No, which is good for
Yes.
him because he's like the world's strongest man at powerlifting, or he was, and he's from New Zealand, something like that. I didn't even look that up. I just know that he's fucking unreal. But so he goes around doing that. But beforehand, we've talked about Westside Barbell before and how like most of those guys are security guards, truck drivers, like all those guys are going to work. They'll come on their lunch break, or they'll come after work, or they'll come whatever. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are still lots of athletes going there. Like you said, UFC fighters, CrossFit, like actual competitors. He said that he's had one world champion weightlifter come through, and he just said, I can't do it just because whatever that range. But
and it's good too. You also said when you're training, when we were just watching before the podcast started, is teammates.
Training partners.
Training partners push you more.
If you can actually find a training partner, like he said, someone who's above you, and then find someone who's just below you.
Yeah, either someone below you who you have to chase, or someone. What is it?
Someone above you who you have to chase, or someone below you you have to run from.
Yes. Which is a very good method, because I mean, at the end of the day, training by yourself sucks. You're not going to get that extra push,
and that's
right?
I think that's what makes CrossFit so enticing, and I think that's what makes people that much better.
Group mentality.
You look at these guys like Froning and stuff. Like I mean, they've trained with Dan Bailey. They trained with Josh Hobart, I think his name is. All these different guys, Matt Chan. It's like those guys are all top 5 competitors. Yeah, you get to train with one of them, you're going to get better. You don't have a choice. We talked about this before we started. Anything you go with, when I play hockey, you play with everybody your own level for a long time. You eventually leave hockey and you just go and play rec hockey. Next thing you know, you're playing guys who didn't make it. Guys who would have been drafted to a pretty high, like, senior A squad, or maybe they played in the WHL, things like that. And next thing you know, it's survival out there, because if you don't play as hard as they do, you're done. You're out, and you'll be disheartened really quick. And Kevin was talking about wrestling, the same thing.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting, because, I mean, we're all personal trainers, and it's like, it really kind of is a BS job for most of us. Like, we're not, again, we work with general population, so we're not really giving anything special to anyone that they couldn't find online if they were motivated enough to pick up a book.
We're there just to keep them on track.
Yeah, which is a really sad commentary on our society if you think about it.
Yeah, you need us to do that.
Yeah, I need someone to be accountable to. Yes. It's like, be accountable to yourself.
You know, I love, no offense to the doctors, but I mean, you went to school for how many years, and you came to me when I took a weekend course for
exactly.
For you to lose weight.
Who knows more about the human body?
Yeah. You or me, you know. I'm just a basic meathead. I like to lift weights, but I also like to learn. That's the same thing with Dave. You know, if you're really wanting to learn, either it's the conjugate system or mobility, one book at a time.
Yeah.
Don't overdo it. And a good article is through CrossFit. Read the Westside Barbell method that the CrossFit Journal has, I believe. Or no.
No. You're thinking the CrossFit Strength Bias.
Yes.
That thing?
No, what's the one that you printed off for me?
That's the Strength Bias.
The other one, Westside.
Oh, no. That was just some random article of a guy who is... he's Westside Barbell certified.
Yes.
We're looking at the certifications. I think he's just personal training. I don't know.
I think I read that one. Yeah, there's good articles on it. I guess we're kind of back to that now.
Here we are. But let's take a break first, because we've been going on for God only knows how long. So we will be right back.
Bye.
Okay, so we found ourselves, we've circled back to the conjugate system. We spent some time bad-mouthing CrossFit, talking up CrossFit, bad-mouthing American weightlifting, up-talking the Russians as always. So what we're going to try to leave you with is essentially 5 points on how you can apply the conjugate method. Real basic stuff, but things that people sort of forget when they're doing weightlifting programs. So number one, we all agree that if you're just brand new into the world of weightlifting, or you're trying to get just basic strength, this is probably not what you should jump right into.
No.
Right?
No.
It takes you have to know basically what you're working with as far as like your form and things like that. You have to learn what accommodating resistance is and how to apply that. So it does take some research. It takes some time, and your body, if you're just walking in, is not ready for this. If you're having trouble back squatting body weight, probably give yourself a couple more months or a couple weeks even to figure yourself out.
And we mentioned some good beginner programs in the first, like 5 through 1 by Jim Wendler's.
Yeah, Wendler's is very good.
Basically, the more you learn, the more you train, the stronger you will get overall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Building volume.
Yes.
And again, once you've built up that base, that kind of leads to the second point. Find your percentages. Learn what weights you should be working at.
Yeah. A good example of this is, for myself, I just started my 25-week challenge on the CrossFit Buy system. And leading into this week, I've been kind of pissing around with certain weights. And I'm finding that although my 1RM is good and I'm happy with that, when I take percentages, a 75%, even do a 5x5, I am dying. By the third set, I'm failing and having to lower weights. So this is, like we said, find the percentages that work. Don't be afraid to maybe swallow your pride just a little bit, and make sure your base is as good as you think.
Yeah, and that a lot of that is, I think, training the right way. I'm gonna branch off a little bit here. This is a pet peeve of mine. Functional training.
What does that mean?
Nobody knows what functional training is. You ask them what it is, and they'll be. He gets so many.
CrossFit,
it's
squatting, and it's just deadlifting. Yeah,
it's stuff that mimics real life activities,
walking slowly, apparently,
or builds certain, or is applicable. Most people say it's applicable to real life scenarios, and it recruits certain motors, certain motor units a certain way, stuff like that.
I've climbed rope to work every day.
That is again. This again. So this is. I think it's snowing outside. No, that's just fluff. Bugs.
It's August in Red Deer.
Functional training. The original definition of functional training is any kind of move that increases the functional capacity of a muscle. So, absolute strength, speed strength, power, stuff like that. So, a squat is a functional move. A push-up is a functional move if you're doing it with the right percentages to increase your strength, your speed, your power.
Deadlift.
Now, most people think there's functional training and then there's non-functional training, which doesn't exist. There's functional training and then there's structural training. So this is training for a different method. This is hypertrophy, muscular endurance, stuff like that, so more bodybuilding. As a beginner, you need to have a mix of both, and I would say structural training is more important because you're building up your physique.
Blocks,
Exactly. If you don't have the body structure or the capacity to do something, you look at weightlifters, and I was watching one of the world championships, and the commentator made a good point. This is kind of going too far with it. A lot of Europeans do too much structural training, and as a result of that, their musculature in the arms is so big they can't achieve a good lockout.
It literally changes your levers.
Exactly, right? So it's, again, there's too much and there's not enough. You need to do some structural training for sports, especially, again, even if you're doing CrossFit, you need to have enough muscle mass to be able to lift enough weight. The bigger you are, the more weight you can lift.
Yes.
You're not going to get bigger doing functional moves. You're going to get bigger doing structural training. Keep in mind, there's not functional and then structural. They kind of overlap. It's just more one or the other depending on how you use it. Exactly.
Training is just Lego.
Exactly. So yeah, build your base, then find your percentages, and train with the appropriate methodologies. Structural, then functional.
If you're let's just say a very weak, skinny average guy, and you're looking to get into strength training, how I found when I was young is bodyweight training. Is doing a lot of bodyweight squats, pull-ups, push-ups, rows.
Yeah, basic stuff like that. Again,
very basic.
And
it's all compound movements. Remember that. He's not isolating things like that. Not to say there's anything wrong with that. It's just that if you're trying to build, you want to get strong quicker.
Yeah,
be efficient with your movements.
You're going to see more benefits from doing a pull-up than you ever will doing a bicep curl.
Yes. Or a lat pull down. That doesn't mean they don't have a place. Now, if we're talking powerlifters and things like that, we want to work on those pulls and things, but that'll probably be
And I mean, again, we touched on this in the first one. If you can't do a pull-up, do a lat pull down. And then do a pull-up, right? Build yourself up. So, again, bodyweight stuff is good, but you're not going to be able to do all of it right away. So, again, train with the appropriate moves, build a base, find your percentages, go from there.
And also, for the next point that we're going to make,
before that, mobility.
Yes, mobility too, and also eating to perform.
Yeah.
Eating to perform and dieting are two separate things.
Yeah, and we said this in the first one. We're not here for weight loss. We're here for athletic performance.
Yes.
If you need to lose 50 pounds, conjugate system isn't going to do it for you.
No. You probably put on 50 pounds of pure muscle, and that'd be great for you. But
if you really
your
wanted
body
to,
composition will change.
Yeah, if you are a heavier guy and you're still looking to get into strength training, fucking hop on a treadmill for a half hour, then work out.
Yeah,
that'll be fine.
Eat very good food, whole food, lean and green.
Or if you're
low
happy
glycemic carbs.
being big, then go right ahead. Then get into powerlifting.
Again, eating to perform. If you're a power lifter and you want to be massive for your weight class, eat a pie. Whatever.
Yes.
Just do what you need to perform.
If you are a CrossFitter, eating, you can do the zone or whatever. Everybody does paleo. I do paleo for the most part.
Yeah.
And it's good. Eat so you feel good, that you feel your performance has not dropped off at all. If all of a sudden you see your PRs dropping like crazy, you're bagged after a while that used to be normal, or you're finding that 4 days a week in the gym is just too much when 5 used to be okay.
Yeah.
You're probably not eating enough. You're probably not sleeping enough. We'll have a separate podcast based on recovery alone.
Yeah.
But this is simple things. And the mobility issue, we'll kind of touch that. That could have been another point. But building blocks, if you are super inflexible, you're not going to be able to do a front squat. You cannot get your elbows up high enough if you have super jacked arms and things like this. Or
if you have big biceps, it's going to be harder for you.
If you don't have a strong enough core, you might be able to get your elbows up, and then as soon as you drop, you're done.
Yeah.
You're going
Another
down.
quote by Louie Simmons: "Just because you have a six-pack doesn't mean you have strong abs. That's a good diet."
Yeah.
And another point: not being afraid of the barbell. Do not be afraid. I think what scares me the most is not lifting that heavy weight. Is going home and saying, could I have done that?
Yeah.
I would have rather dropped that barbell in the squat rack or on the floor and said, fuck, than what would have happened if
Don't go home and say, wow, I didn't train as hard as I could have today.
Yeah.
And it might be a while. Now I have to wait 2-3 weeks, or maybe, depending on what your program is, maybe I have to wait 4 months to try that PR again.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
And that's, if you are testing your maxes and everything, go to your max, right? That going to max means you're going to fail. Because if you don't fail, then you don't know what your max
Some of
is.
the things we have to tell clients all the time: don't be afraid to fail. And they always get offended or upset at the word fail. It's like, I will fail probably once a week at a lift, even if it is that last rep of that 5th set.
Or
where it just sucks ass, or it looks really bad. Now, I'm not saying, I'm not endorsing bad form. I'm saying there will be a point in your training where all of a sudden things break down a little bit.
Yes.
But you have to go for it. Otherwise, you'll never know.
Yeah, and don't be afraid of that failure. Just because you do fail doesn't make you a failure, right? You have to.
It means your body's going to get ready for the next time.
Exactly. And then just set that fail point as your goal for next time. Like, I couldn't do this, I'm going to do it next time.
Yeah, and also track your weight, right? I mean, last week, if you had to knock down the percentage, record that.
Yeah,
I had to knock down 5 pounds for my 3rd set. Mm-hmm. And then that next week, make sure you don't do that. Make sure you find that motivation to get through it.
Break the sets up. Instead of doing 3x5, do a 5x3. It's simple changing. The volume stays the same.
Leads into our last point: being consistent and sticking to your program. And the methodology you're using, right? So,
to be honest, I'm not bad with that. I think it's you two who have the issue.
I only use YouTube and Jillian Michaels for most of my stuff.
So it's like they said, adjust the percentages and the weights accordingly. Don't bail on your program, though.
No.
Right? Like, just because you're having a rough day or a rough week or whatever.
Swallow your pride.
Deal with it and go again. And again, obviously, if you keep failing week after week, month after month, if it's a consistent failure, you're doing something wrong.
Or the program
and that's where
really shitty and not balanced properly.
It could be the program, but it's most of the time, I think it's the people doing it.
Whether you're not eating to perform, like we already talked about.
Or you're lifting with your ego. Or you're afraid, stuff like that. So
you didn't give any time or proper effort to how your deadlift should
be. And a good little bit off-track point, wherever you live, find a coach where you can go see for a day. I mean, that's what I did. I mean, I'm in Red Deer. There's barely any legit Olympic weightlifting coaches. I went down to Calgary to SAIT to get taught by Michael for two and a half hours. And to be honest, that 2.5 hours was amazing.
Yeah.
That's the same thing. We took our CrossFit 16 hours in a CrossFit gym learning. Great shit.
Yeah. 16
hours with an Olympic weightlifting coach. Same guy, like down in SAIT. It was great. Get out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
Whether you're a trainer, whether you're just trying to learn how to do, or maybe you want to be competitive in something. Go get out there. Don't sit on your phone. Don't sit on Twitter and their websites. Things. Go and meet these people. They all want to meet you. There's no special club gym where they're
No.
like, oh no, we only allow athletes. Anybody will
Yeah.
take you and train you if you're willing to put in the time and the
Yes.
effort.
Yeah.
They will.
And a couple of bucks probably.
Yes. Money
No,
talks.
nothing's free.
Nothing is free,
No,
but
nothing's free.
you can't
But
put a
it's
price
worth
on your
it.
knowledge. There'll always be money, people.
No. And that's the thing. I mean, even going to Red Deer to Ignite, that was awesome. I mean,
Yeah,
he
go to the
tweaked a
people who
couple of
give
my
a
lifts
shit.
and gave me
Yeah.
some tips, which really helped me out.
Yeah.
And I got to thank them for that, too.
And that being said, if you guys have any questions for us, this is the plug section of the podcast.
Yes.
You can reach us at brokenbarbellpodcast@gmail.com. So any questions you might have about lifting, you want to badmouth us and say we don't know what the hell we're talking about, we're open to anything and everything. You can also check us out on Facebook, Broken Barbell Podcast. Like I said before, shoot us a like. I know you're looking at it. Everything helps.
Click the button. It's not
Click
hard.
the button. It's not hard.
Even if you hate us.
Even if you hate us, just get the word out how much you hate us.
Get more people to hate us.
Yeah. And then if you go to SoundCloud, type in Broken Barbell Podcast, all one word, and you can find this if you didn't find us on Facebook already. And do you guys have anything else you want to plug? Tom will be putting up a blog very soon. I'll force him because he's super sciencey, and I know it's probably really hard to get what the fuck he's saying a lot of the time, so I want him to type it out, and he has time to do so. And me and Kevin, we keep posting blogs up on WordPress. We post them to the Facebook page usually once a week, maybe twice a week.
Yeah, once a week usually.
Yeah, and you can follow us. That's more of a personal take, kind of on what we've been
Yes.
doing and going through and stuff like that. Not like personal lives, but like personal training goals, things like that.
If you guys also want, I'm reading a good mobility book. It's actually by a Russian coach. I can't pronounce the name. Super Joints for you science nerds.
Yeah.
it's Pavel
Exercise
Satsuma.
science nerds. If you want to check it out, it's free. It's a PDF file. It's 123 pages, which I didn't realize when I was printing it. So yeah, be prepared to sit there for a little bit.
Okay, guys, so that's the end of podcast number 2. We'll definitely be here next week.
Yeah.
Yes, you betcha.
All right, guys, bye-bye.